The State of the Cities report was released on Wednesday. Stacey Lee Joseph from the SA Cities Network joins us over Skype to tell us about some of the report's main findings. Stacey, thank you very much for joining us. This is a 400-page report, but if you can summarize, what were some of its key findings?
So some of the key overarching points in the report, firstly perhaps to make the point that the report emphasizes that cities are incredibly important, crucial to local and national development and growth. And that despite quite a lot of complex challenges, cities are actually not performing that badly. But there are certain things that need to be improved. We need to improve some of the systems that we've got. We need to improve on the capabilities to actually achieve the kind of spatial transformation that we want in cities. And the point about spatial transformation being very important, that we need inclusive growth, we need a sustainable growth, we need better governed spaces. But in order to do that, we need to transform our space, both looking at our historical spatial legacy, but also starting to think innovatively and creatively about the cities of the future that we need. So those are some of the key points that it makes. And perhaps one last point to mention as an overarching point is that as much as local government's absolutely critical in this regard, in making and driving the kind of city development and growth we're talking about, local governance is perhaps a term that we should use probably more widely, because it's not just about the role of local government, it's also about the role of other actors. It's about business, it's about the knowledge institutions, it's about civil society, it's about private individuals. And government needs to create the kind of enabling environment that allows those various actors to have a role in planning and shaping, because they're already doing it. It's just that we need to start enabling and guiding so that we meet each other and sort of have a similar spatial vision that we buy into, so that we can have the sort of long-term inclusive growth and development that we're talking about.
Stacey, the timing of the release of this report is quite telling, obviously with the local government elections coming up. But if we also just have a look at what's happening in Tshwane, the dynamics at local government level are quite complex, and the report does say that service delivery actually has improved over the last 5 years.
Correct. But perhaps firstly to mention the fact that the report does coincide with the election year. And part of the reason for that is perhaps twofold. Firstly, that it's at the end of a term of office. So what we do is a 5-year perspective, so that we can look back, so that it provides a bit of a barometer and saying this is where we are in terms of urban development and growth in South Africa. But also, what is the sort of foresight that we need to have? How do we consider some of the key challenges and opportunities moving forward into the next 5 years of office, and what are the pertinent issues that have to be addressed. In terms of also the election year, it's about saying, well, there's critical issues around service delivery that we have to address, but can we begin to have conversations that also expand our sort of thinking and the general conversations around what needs to happen in the local government space, conversations around mobility, around how we plan the city long term, around how we use resources more efficiently and more sustainably, about how we think about alternative financing for cities, because the more and more urbanization is a reality across the world. The more and more people come into the cities, more and more emphasis there is on providing adequate services, on accommodating higher populations in our cities. I mean, our cities are growing at quite a big rate, and so city governments have to think about how do you accommodate and how do you provide adequate access to everybody within the city boundaries. So the report looks at those kinds of things. I should probably mention that it's a slightly more technical report. It does look at governance issues. It does make the points about corruption, about the inefficiencies, about the challenges around governance. But it also looks at a lot of the technical issues. It looks at how the systems are set up, about how institutions should change. It does make the point that we need to change power relations, that we need to change the capacities within our systems if we're going to get the transformative agenda right.
Stacey, speaking of urbanisation, the report does say that, like many countries, South African cities are growing unsustainably. And, strained water resources, landfill sites running out, etc. Those are obviously huge problems for local governments. Which cities are sort of managing that the best in South Africa?
Some cities are doing probably better than others in terms of being more sustainable and trying to respond more adequately to resource efficiencies. The biggest cities are often Cape Town, Johannesburg. They often have been able to develop the capabilities and the thinking around doing this better. However, what we've also provided in the report is something called city profiles. We've provided dashboards that show the different cities and how they've fared in various components. And an important point to make is that it's difficult to say one city is doing better than any of the others. In many ways, the cities there's a balanced sort of score sheet, and some cities are better at some things than other cities, but all of them are delivering in some ways. So what the report tries to show is where improvements have to be made. How can we start making those improvements? What are some of the innovations that need to be thought of in order to make those improvements? And that the sustainability conversation isn't just a side conversation, that we actually have to think about sustainability as something that fundamentally informs our planning, our implementation, our response to the urban space.